What was it like working at Eton, and what was the overall sense around some of these issues?
It's been described by other members of staff as a stifling monoculture. And the idea is that although we're not told explicitly what kind of viewpoints might not be allowed, people know, and they will tend to self-censor. When a hot topic comes up, you know what the particular viewpoint you're supposed to take on it is. Otherwise, you might find yourself in similar situation to I am now.
And what is the monoculture, if you were to summarize it?
Particular strands you could pick out would probably be what you see elsewhere in institutions that are given, in my opinion, a fairly craven response to this encroaching cancel culture. So students would be unlikely to hear, for example, any kind of counter-arguments to the viewpoints that characterize the Black Lives Matter movement. Unlikely to hear any kind of counter-arguments to the view that trans women are women, for example. Unlikely to hear any counter-arguments. In fact, the one I tried to give was just cancelled, to the idea that the fundamental relationship between men and women is one of men oppressing women, as something called the patriarchy is a social construct.
It's quite ironic, really, that a lot of these views are espoused by the left, and yet Eton is the most elitist institution, arguably, in the country, isn't it? Isn't there something incongruous about this?
Interesting question, and I do think that one of the reasons Eton is so sensitive about this and didn't even want boys to be seen to have the opportunity to hear these views and maybe even say why they were wrong, is that there's this sense that because it's Eton, it's always worried that someone's going to come at it with those kind of claims about being too elitist. So it's deliberately gone for the exact kind of views as the branding that it thinks will stop people being able to say that. So go further left in case people think that you are too far on the right.
I find that really odd because, I'm from Russia. If I said to someone in Russia, in the far east of Russia, who's doesn't speak English, never seen foreign news, whatever, Eton, people would instantly know what it's about. They would associate it as the place which produces the great prime ministers, the generals, the CEOs.
Not Boris Johnson, mate.
The people who really shape the destiny of Britain and have shaped for centuries. To think, I think it was a shock to a lot of people that an institution of that caliber had been as captured as it clearly has been, according to your view, by this mentality. It's quite a shock to a lot of people. Did you find it, having worked elsewhere, did you find that culture strange?
Well, I think there's a bit of a divide there between the way the boys still want to operate and the way some members of staff want the place to go. I think the boys, by and large, are very much still in favour of the tradition of debate, and most of them wanted this talk to go ahead. They tried to invite interesting, sometimes controversial speakers. What we're seeing more and more is that that's getting shut down, and the Overton window is moving because of the demands of some members of staff.
I find that very odd, not least because the boys presumably have internet access, right?
They do.
So they could watch our interview with Posey Parker or another conversation. So it's not like they're going to be insulated from these ideas. So to me, not allowing a lecture or a talk or to be in a debate is not really about protecting the boys from quote-unquote bad ideas. It's about protecting the reputation of the institution. Would you agree with that?
I think one of the main fears about my particular lecture being on YouTube, even with the disclaimer, was that it would somehow bring Eton into disrepute. Now, given that its reputation is for debate, discussion, and as part of its aims, it actually says that we aim at promoting independent, broad-based critical thought, it's difficult to see how just having a debate could bring you into disrepute. But of course, it's really about the branding. It's not about the reputation for debate at all.
But isn't it also as well, I mean, let's be honest, this to me screams of weak leadership from the head teacher, because surely, as a head, your job is to say, look, this is what we're going to do, this is our tradition, and if you don't like it, and if you get upset, well, number one, you're entitled to do that, but you're not going to dictate what can and can't be taught or said in the college, surely.
I think there is an institutional loss of nerve involved. And I think the leadership should have given a more robust response to the threat posed by one person saying this whole debate has to stop because it makes me feel sad. The boys should have been allowed to go ahead with it.
And we see this right the way through education, don't we, really? It's not just in Eton, we see it at universities.
I think it's established fairly well now that universities are supporting this kind of cancel culture because there's about 10% of people who are strongly in favour of it. If the academic gives a viewpoint that is offensive or controversial, then they should be sacked. And then the majority of people, even if they weren't strongly opposed that view, are quite happy just to watch it go along. And you get the same people, especially these elite schools like Eton, coming out of that university environment and perpetuating the same kind of culture in the schools. So it's that trickle-down effect, just as the ideas tend to start in universities and then they slowly percolate in secondary schools. I think we're seeing the same kind of institutional shift as well.